Welcome to my home. It's funny, isn't it? This is where we do our work these days, but it's an interesting way for us to think about learning environments. Because in my particular home, I am always thinking about how things can be better, how we can improve the functionality, the quality of the light. Is there better storage solutions? All those things I think about a lot, much to my husband's frustration, I think sometimes, but never mind. And it's a bit like that with learning environments. I see them as a metaphor for gardening. So we might, if we plant a new garden, we admire it for about a day and then weeds come up and we've got to pull the weeds out, and then we might have to prune something or snip this. Then that plant's dead, we have to replace it. And then every 5 years or so, we might have to start all over again and reimagine that garden afresh. That's a little bit how I see learning environments. We need to think about them as a work in progress rather than something that's finished and done and we can move on. So that's what we're going to look at today. What does that entail? Before we get started, a first question is, what actually is an innovative learning environment? I get to travel around different parts of the world and I've seen many beautiful designs, but I wouldn't always call them an innovative learning environment, because an innovative learning environment is this intersection of innovative spatial design and innovative teaching and learning practices, those two things working together. So I like to use this quote from Gislason, a researcher in learning environments, where he sees all the components of our learning environment as a network of elements. And it's good to think about what those elements are. He said, school design should be viewed as a network of elements that together shape the learning environment. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So he sees these 4 elements as the network that shape the learning environment. There's the physical environment, there's the organizational aspects, there's the student dynamics, and there's the teacher culture. And in this first one today, we're just going to have a look at what do we mean by teacher culture. So I think we can agree right now, before we move on, that the day of the desks in rows all facing the front to the single focal point is nearing its end. That was something designed for another era. So I'm not talking about a model where we're replicating traditional classroom practices and design. Instead, we're looking at the contemporary approach. So the solo factory model on one side was one teacher, transmission model to many. The other side, you can see that there's multiple things happening. That teacher in the red dot is running a didactic class, while the yellow dot teacher might be facilitating a discussion, where the other teachers are roving around because the students are involved in self-directed learning. But from my perspective, the solo teacher model can prevail in the innovative learning environment, because it's not just about the environment, it's about the teacher and the practices that occur there. So I like to use this topology by Dovey and Fisher, where they have reviewed many hundreds of innovative school designs and articulated 6 ways that teaching and learning can be catered for in the design of the learning environment. And it's nice to have a point of reference like this when we're thinking about, well, how shall we organize our physical environment? Well, what do we need to do in it? And this is a nice way of looking at it. You can see that the first 2 are teacher facilitated, so either one to many or one to a small group. The next ones, the first 2, I should say, are teacher facilitated, where it's one to many. But the 3 and 4 are more about where it's a team teacher facilitator. So multiple teachers are there, teachers are working together, and they take on different roles. 5 is a one-on-one instruction, and 6 is where students are working independently. But you can see from the ILETC project, my PhD was part of this project. From this project, there was a survey of more than 800 teachers, 800 principals, and they were answering questions around how how are your innovative learning environments being used by the teachers? And you can see here that even in 2016, 2/3 of the learning environments designed for innovative teaching and learning practices were predominantly using more traditional teacher-facilitated modes. So there has to be a real thinking and deliberate strategy as how do we maximize the learning environment for student learning. So we're moving from solo towards team-based practice. And what is necessary, and I think we've heard the word collaboration a lot here, is this sense of we need teachers to collaborate. And one of the reasons why is this idea of collective teacher efficacy. When it's high, when teachers are better together, they feel that they can reach students and overcome negative influences in a collaborative way rather than what they could do on their own. So they found, this research here found that teachers are more persistent, they plan more, they accept responsibility for student achievement, and temporary setbacks and failures don't discourage them when in that collective or team-based environment. So I'm a big advocate for teachers no longer being solo but team-based practice, but it needs a lot of work for that to happen. And I love this quote because is collaboration the same as cooperation? Well, not according to this study. They were still unable to truly achieve the desired outcome because they confused pleasant cooperative behaviour with collaboration. So collaboration needs a deliberate strategy for it to be effective and not just merely polite cooperation. And one way that we do that is by building the culture of trust amongst the teacher team. This is a precondition for the collaborative professional learning community. And this work by Brick and Schneider looks at 3 ways of seeing trust. The first 2, one that they call organic, is that's this way of, in the past, we trusted people because of the position that they held. And it's not so much that belief in the moral authority of an institution anymore that we hold on to. The next one was contractual, where I might do something and you might respond. We have that contractual basis of trust. But what Brick and Schneider really talk about here is relational trust. And Dewey observed that a good school is more like a family than a factory. And so that building up relational trust amongst teaching team in an innovative learning environment is critical. So how do we grow that culture of trust? Well, there's several levels here that this research has shown. First of all, it begins with just hearing about another person's practice, then critically looking toward exchanging ideas and materials. But level 4 trust is when we're in it together and we take collective responsibility for instructional problem solving and planning. And that's where I'd like to think that as a teaching team in these spaces, you might be able to reach that. So one way, if we go back to thinking about the environment, is to grow the teacher team environmental competence. This idea of teacher environmental competence is an awareness of the impact of the physical environment on teaching and learning. And colleagues of mine at Melbourne University looked at this, Leighton and Byers, and they saw it's deliberately and purposefully utilising the attributes of a classroom and the surrounding environment to deliver specific pedagogical goals. And as a result of a professional learning encounters, the teacher changes the utilisation of the space to enhance the learning experiences. So it's growing our environmental competence is something we can do and need to attend to. So Lackney, who originally coined this phrase of teacher environmental competence, looks at some contributing factors. So an individual's capacity. So I'm one of these people who feel how an environment is working and can critically look at it. But it's a capacity that you can grow. But also amongst your team, maybe there's somebody who is strong in this area. The next one is social factors. For example, my turf, your turf. In my research, there was a teacher who was in a shared learning environment, but the other teacher, as she put it, wasn't on the same page. And she could see that the teacher put up barriers so that they had their turf And this teacher felt that there were so many more possibilities for student learning if they were on the same page. So this idea of my turf, your turf is really a powerful one there. And then there's organisational factors that influence the culture and how the school organisation, how the spatial organisation can facilitate that competence. So how do we grow this? Well, first of all, we have to amplify the importance of space to pedagogy. We can have targeted PD around this, and we can develop a common language or common terminology or ways that we can grow teacher environmental competence. So, what's your experience of the learning environment and what could be possible in your learning environment? In the section we're going to work together on, we're going to really look at these topologies that Dovey and Fisher developed and analyse them from the perspective of your particular space for learning. So let's have a chat about that now.